They had the tech, they had the money, they had partnerships on 5 continents, and 4 years later, completely gone, liquidated. This is a story of a company that thought it just needed a few big wins. But what it really needed was a business that worked. Because sometimes you're not in a crisis because something's broken. You're in a crisis because you're chasing vital signs instead of doing surgery.
Leadership today isn't just about scaling. It's about navigating constant uncertainty, market disruptions, and high-pressure decisions. If you're dealing with chaos, bottlenecks, and relentless pressure, welcome to the Business Emergency Room.
Welcome to the Business Emergency Room. I'm very glad you're tuned in today. We have an interesting case to dissect, highly relevant. It's called Hyzon Motors. All data that I'm sharing is publicly available. So this is a professional case reflection, one in which I have personal involvement, and hence the reason I want to talk about it today. But I'm not divulging anything that I cannot share in public, right? So, Hyzon. In early 2021, Hyzon went public via SPAC in collaboration with Decarbonization Plus Acquisition Corp. They themselves had developed hydrogen fuel cells for trucks, and they were at a level of maturity that they were ready to put these things actually in trucks and out in the market. And so they pitched a zero-emission commercial transport, bold and very timely, and technically also very plausible. There was a lot of early investor buzz, and shares reached $9. So yeah, solid opening initially. But by mid-2021 already, so just 6 months in, short seller reports surfaced, claiming things like there was inflated demand, that they had phantom customers on their books, that there was MOUs presented as firm orders, things like that. Hyzon denied the claims, but the first cracks started to show, only a few months in. They pursued rapid global expansion, and they set up collaborations on every continent. And their strategy was to tailor operations per region to match local legislation and adoption pace, right? The European Union was making very different decisions than the US in terms of clean energy and hydrogen infrastructure. And so to tailor to that, the collaboration set up on each continent was also different. When I got called in was the summer of 2022. The kind of negative rumors had kept circling and hadn't really been put to bed. By then, the European collaboration was probably about 9 months in, and the majority of the money was spent, but there was not a single truck delivered yet. So things were definitely not going well. And there was finally, and yes, I'll say finally in this case, an ask for help. So the European setup was a joint venture with a family-run innovation firm with the intent for them to then rapidly scale production, sales, and support for the whole European-oriented business. The assumptions were that a clear mandate had been given, that there was sufficient funding in place, and that the whole operation should have been off to the races. And clearly it was not. And what I kind of heard from headquarters was, well, they should be doing this. There should be trucks rolling out of that operation by now. They're not. Why are they not? How far away from that are we? And we're struggling to get the data or the reports out as to the why. The messaging was just that they should be able to just get this done, right? Well, the challenge was that that local partner, that family-run business, had experience in one-off bespoke vehicles. they were not a production oriented organization. But with great enthusiasm, they accepted this partnership. And as a result, over half the staff that I encountered, all very willing and capable and nice people, more than half of them were brand new. Yeah, so they've been all hired or come on seat within the last few months. In an organization that wasn't structured. They were hired for things that hadn't happened in the business before. So imagine that almost everybody you show up for work with is stepping into a job that didn't exist a couple of months before and hence is yet largely undefined. In parallel, headquarters was growing simultaneously. So there wasn't a lot of bums on seats in 2021 and 2022, when that year that I came in mid-year, they were starting to really change that. But it was still very much a growth process. And also there were a lot of people who were in roles that didn't exist a few months prior and still needed complete shaping. And hence, a lot of people were largely still operating from whatever experience they had from previous roles as to how to fill in these positions, which was a mismatch from corporate experience and small companies on different continents, clearly. There was a lot of specialists that were hired from large corporates, particularly. So they brought in some really useful and good and smart people who should be able to help them build this business. But the challenge was that many of these people were kind of dropped into chaos, right? If you are in a large organization with a big support structure, the chief hydrogen expert, or the one who's been dealing with truck production and alternative fuel cells in truck production, but you're part of an organization that has a large R&D frameworks and has brought stuff to market before, and now you're plucked out of that support system, being put in a business where barely anybody has done that, and definitely nobody has done that in that collaboration and that setup. Many of these people ended up working all sorts of different challenges because they were the hydrogen specialist or the truck specialist or the person with the connections, and not necessarily spending their time on doing what they did best. The other challenge was that the timelines were very unrealistic across the board. It was clear that with the same enthusiasm to grow the business and pace that out fast, promises had been made to the outside world, but also goals had been set internally, which were so far off that people didn't really know where to start. When you've been given, in personal life too, when you've been given a task that's so unrealistic, or a mountain that seems so big to climb, you struggle to start because you don't know where to start. Well, it clearly felt that was what was going on in this organization too. What was also clear is that significant money was spent because the money was there, and the idea was, well, if we're gonna roll an X number of trucks off the belt, then we need parts for all these trucks. And we do know what kind of parts we need and how to buy parts. So that had happened. And money was spent also on hiring of all these individuals. But all without much of a delivery framework or how it would hang together. So with the growing public scrutiny, the blame game started to happen, right, between the different leadership factions, and particularly between the different continents. There was a lot of back and forth saying, I want better data, I want more data, I want better reports, I want different reports. But really, what on, maybe? It was also very, very clear there was no malicious intent from any side. There was so much hours being spent by everybody. Everybody wanted to work hard and make this a success. They were all excited about being part of something as new and interesting as this. But the disconnects were absolutely massive. So yeah, lots of stress in the system, um, and no common language or processes to work off. So what it really looked like was a culture of over the wall management, as I would call it. So somewhat clear directives, but very high level directives have been thrown over the wall with the associated money bag. But with also an expectation that then would be flawlessly delivered at the end of it. And when the reality didn't match expectations, and the first comments were starting to make that maybe not all of that was feasible, that probably didn't get responded to until the cracks became kind of hard to ignore. It was this culture of they just need to deliver. People just need to get on with it. They just need to produce these trucks. But without scale up experience, and a definition of what that then looked like at a more granular level, people were just lost. People were lost as to what their contribution to the larger piece of the puzzle really looked like. And hence spend their time trying to answer unclear questions from others, going around in circles, really.
Let's pause for a second. That's the emergency most leaders miss. You're measuring, you're tracking, you're shipping, but you're still bleeding cash because there's no clear process to act on what you're learning. So there is stuff being done for the sake of being done, but it's not connected. That's not a growth issue. That's actually a typical business continuity problem. And if you're nodding along right now, you are exactly who I built this podcast for. To celebrate the 1-year anniversary of the Business Emergency Room, I'm giving away over $5,000 value, a business continuity plan upgrade to one listener. You can all win this giveaway. And what I ask you to do is in the podcast anniversary period, so between now and the end of July, go on LinkedIn or another relevant social media professional platform, and post something about the podcast, comment on your favorite episode, or comment on any of the posts me or my guests have made, or reshare any of the posts around the podcast, or go wherever you're listening to your podcast right now and leave us a review or a comment. We will pick up all of those names and draw one lucky winner from there. Because we also want to reward all of you who are doing anything to help us grow this podcast, you will receive by email a checklist for your business continuity plan to actually take it beyond whatever is typically in there or what ChatGPT might help you create, to really look at making sure your business continuity plan is live and usable and not just another data set, as we were talking in today's episode. If you're interested in some personalized support to map your risk or pressure test your system and really get your business continuity plan to a level where it actually helps you when disaster strikes, take action now. Let's get back to the episode.
If you're listening and if any of this sounds familiar, high growth, strong tech, big sales targets, but the reality doesn't quite add up and you're bleeding cash and you're fighting chaos daily, this isn't just a Hyzon story, right? This might be yours too. And we are still celebrating the 1-year anniversary of this podcast. So I want to remind you all that I'm giving away an over $5,000 worth upgrade to your business continuity plan to one listener this month. And in order to put your name in the hat to win this grand prize, I need you to share something about the podcast on LinkedIn. So comment or reshare any of my posts, or pick up any of the previous episodes you enjoyed and post something about that. Or wherever you're listening to this podcast, leave a review. And we will pick up all these names of anyone who's done this, and we will pull one and give them this upgrade to your business continuity plan, really talking beyond the standard tick in the box checks that are in a plan, but really looking at the people angle and the interface angle and the interdependencies in there, which should really help preventing derailment and or identify some of what your current weak spots are that may not have led to derailment, but could very easily if you try to grow, scale, or are meeting some unexpected circumstances. I will also, for the effort of doing this for me, if you are not a lucky winner, you will still get the business continuity plan upgrade checklist from me, so you will not be empty-handed. So yeah, if you want a clear triaged action plan for your business, this might be one way to go about it. The winner will be announced in the first episode in August. So let's get back to this one, though. I spent the second half of 2022 inside that storm at Hyzon. And what happened is that shortly after I came in, the CEO was replaced. I was brought in, and then a formal investigation was launched into the European operations. The company admitted publicly that it couldn't rely on prior financial statements, so that there had been over promises and challenges in the reporting that had been provided, which led to SEC probes, class action lawsuits beginning, and the stock dove below $2. It actually made it to below $1 at some point. We found some major challenges to address in the European joint venture, particularly. The fixes needed to be around an actual production framework, realistic targets and promises, complete realignment internally about what was feasible, what could be done, what was already promised, what damage control we needed to do as well, right? So there was a huge element of that. Is there re-engaging all these customers, looking at all this material that was bought that wasn't going to be part of a truck anytime soon. All of that's resolving on a very practical level. But it was also very much about the fact that we needed better mechanisms for decision making and accountability and timeline control and integration and interface management. We managed to, in that period, bring on an interim manager to actually help turn around that European organization, and do damage control as good as possible. At corporate level, by the end of 22, after the example in Europe, one of the global consulting houses was brought in to try and do at global level what we were doing already in Europe, right? To try to get some of the fundamentals in place. But yeah, it's safe to say that the foundation was severely buckled by 2022 already. And despite all this, the interventions by the board and all this external support brought in to try and redirect things, Hyzon limped through much of 2023 and most of 2024, and ultimately by December 24, the board voted to dissolve the company. By then, they were $370 million in debt almost, whilst their Q3 revenue had just been about $135,000. So yeah, no line of sight to actually turning this company around. And so by January Q1 2025, the full staff layoffs happened. Nasdaq delisted or issued a delisting notice, and the shareholders approved liquidation, and the company was delisted with a final share price of just 60 cents, down from $9. And one of the most hyped energy startups of the decade was gone in under 4 years. So a sad story. After I left, I kept watching what happened in those years was predictable and painful, but it's also very instructive. And I still reference this case because it shows how chaos builds slowly. Well, slowly is a relative term because everything was moving at lightning speed in this company. But the crumbling starts early, and if you don't address that, then it just spirals, right? And leads to what to many looks still like a sudden collapse. What failed here was the operationalization of the business. There wasn't one big cause, and there were many interrelated ones. So there was no fundamental processes in place before major spending began, including rigid business controls. The reporting was legacy based and not aligned with investor grade needs. They were trying to build 5 global partnerships, 4 or 5, while still building corporate headquarters and structuring their business at that level, which is, well, ginormous and potentially too much considering how many people were actually available in the company to oversee all that and lead it. So the leadership span of control was far too wide. And there was definitely also a case of the people that got you here might not get you there. So the technology behind this company is great. There is, if you go back, the verdict on that was and probably is still very positive. But the people who got that to a level of maturity and brought that up are not necessarily the people who can lead a massive global production of trucks, right? It's a different skill set, different size, different interest levels. So yeah, there was some misfits that came with the growth. The partnership structures were very loose and undefined, and also very varied. And so then trying to grip control of something where you've given up that control from day one by having a loose arrangement, and also trying to arrange a partnership in Europe that's a joint venture with a family business versus a setup in the US where you're effectively just paying somebody to produce as per specification, a very mechanical transactional arrangement. It doesn't. It's a different level of management required in all these, right? They hired a lot of the right people, all these specialists and high caliber, good resources. They did a decent amount of headhunting and poaching people away from other places. You can have all that caliber, but if you put them together in a structure that is undefined, these people are just as lost, right? And are spending their days and times on inefficiencies and figuring out how they work together and fit together, and being frustrated rather than doing what they do best. There was not enough regionally tailoring of the global playbook, and simply not enough leadership capacity for the pace of growth, and hence not enough clarity in direction. There was overarching goals, but translation to what that then really looked like by individuals was virtually impossible because the gap was too big. Coming in and figuring out how anyone fitted in that larger picture was really hard, and I saw all these people try really hard. Yeah. And then let's talk about times and milestones. Ambition levels were high, fueled by a great deal of success. And yes, there is sensitive to market leadership and stuff and timelines in all this. But recognition of the realism or unrealism around goals, and breakdown of goals to interim goals, and then checking what the reality of those and creating feedback loops around those and adjusting. None of that existed. And there was no shared business narrative or cultural grounding that helped people connect the dots, right? There was people coming from multinationals, who'd done 3-4 decade careers in a company like GE, and there was people who, on the other side who'd done 3 decades in a tiny regional or local Australian or European business, now all thrown together in this organization that didn't have an identity yet. So what they brought in is what they came in with. People didn't speak the same language, weren't talking about the same, and were used to structures and setup, and in the lack of having the structures and setup there, they were reverting to what they knew, which were things that didn't connect or didn't talk to each other or didn't translate to the new setup. So people were excited about the brand, and it was amazing to see how excited they remained despite the frustration and the hardship that was there for many. They really believed in the concept and the brand and wanted to be part of it so badly. But that in itself, that dream, was not enough to tie people together in a practical manner to then be able to deliver something out of nothing. So what went wrong? Not the product, not the market, the operations. Hyzon believed in this fix illusion, the fix by hire. If we get enough of the right experts, we're good. The fix by deal. If this, we'll just partner with somebody who's in a local market and can do this, or this new customer will change everything. We just need to sell, and that will give us the carrot and the stick to deliver, and somehow we'll figure out how to then do that. Or the fix by story. The vision is too compelling. Will carry us. Hydrogen is the thing. The market is ready for this, so that will get us there. But what it really needed was surgery, right? Operational playbooks tailored by region, clear structure before scaling, defined roles, proper span of control, real milestones, feedback loops, accountability. This isn't just a Hyzon problem. It's what happens when process is skipped and when scale is rushed, or when everyone assumes someone else is handling it. Or it's clear, right, that a single instruction or expectation is enough for somebody to interpret a huge piece of work and get on with it. I still think about the people inside that company frequently, the good people, because they all were. There were so many amazing professionals there, good, hardworking, nice people. And they saw the chaos. All of them saw it. They all saw it from different angles, but everybody saw it. And everybody was frustrated by it, and everybody wanted to fix it. But none of them felt that they really could stop it. So don't let that be your story. If your business is sprinting forward, but the foundation feels shaky, stop waiting for a miracle fix, or stop hoping that the growth or the next big deal will somehow iron these things out in due course. You need to triage this properly before it's too late and you're building a house on a buckled foundation. Come and talk to me if you want to have a quick look at where you're standing and whether there's some fundamental things that need some attention before it's too late. It could be the most important thing you do this quarter. I'm here for you. Love to hear from you. Love to help you succeed and not repeat a story like this. Because we need this technology to succeed. And we need you to bring these dreams to reality for all of us. So thanks for tuning in today. And love to see you or hear you back here for our next episode. Thank you. Bye.
That's it for this episode of the Business Emergency Room. If you are currently dealing with chaos or disruption in your business, please reach out. You can email, text, or call, and I will find a way to connect with you within 24 hours. I've helped others steer out of the storm, and I know I can help you too. Talk soon. Please like, subscribe, and share.